Hey everyone, welcome to today's edition of One Single Story. It is Thursday. We are still in the 21 verses of Obadiah. And as we mentioned at the beginning, Obadiah is about how Edom was treating Jacob, right? Israel. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
Make sure I'm
Sounds
saying
good
it
to me.
right. Huh?
I said it sounds good to me.
Yeah. And God's responding very harshly to them. Over and over in the Bible, from the beginning to the end, we find how we treat people is important to God. So why does how we treat people or how we treat other people carry such harsh treatment if we treat them wrong? Why does it carry such harsh treatment from God? Why is that so important on God's scale?
I feel like that's for multiple reasons. One is because he knows us and he knows how selfish we are. And, it's much easier for us to choose our own well-being over someone else's. And the state of your heart is often displayed in the way that you tend to treat others.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Jesus made it pretty clear that you should treat everybody else the way that you would like to be treated.
Right. We call that golden rule.
Yeah. But we're not always good at that.
And I always say about the golden rule that if you read it correctly, it should be do unto others as you would have them do unto you if you were in the same situation, right? Because sometimes, for example, I was raised in a home where I had a dad that worked hard, mom that worked hard. They loved the church. They were generous. And so I knew when I got to a certain age, I was expected to get a job. And, there were just certain things that were expected of me. Had I been raised in a different environment where neither parent held down a job and their parents hadn't held down a job, when I came along, I wouldn't have thought, okay, I need to be responsible and have a job. And sometimes the do unto others is, okay, we're over here in this camp where we got generations of people who work very hard and we want to do to them like we would want done to us in our situation. We'll get a job. Well, get a job is not necessarily the answer or the easy answer for somebody who has generational problems. So I think if you read it correctly, it's not just do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's how you would have them do unto you if you were in the same situation, And I think that reveals a lot about us.
I think this may seem overly simplistic, but the reason I think God puts such an emphasis on how we treat other people is we're all created in the image and likeness of God. We are His creation, and therefore when we mistreat someone else, it's the same as mistreating God. That is, to me, is a convicting thought process, that how I treat every human being I come in contact with is the same as me doing that to God or to Jesus or to the Holy Spirit. Jesus Himself said, if you even give a cup of cold water in my name to the least of these among you, you're doing it unto me. It's a direct reflection. And throughout Scripture, He teaches us that we are the reflection of the name and the character of God and His holiness by the way we respond to other people. And so a lack of that is not just what we do to people, it's sometimes what we don't do for them or how we withhold back. And so I think it's a direct reflection of our relationship to God.
Yeah, I recently heard a message where the preacher was talking about how part of our problem in dealing with other people is they're a mirror, and they're more of a mirror than we want to admit. And what we're seeing in them is really a problem in us.
Yeah.
Not.
How about your kids? That is a wonderful example of that.
Or your spouse, but your kids especially. And the thing about it, I say this often in a sermon, I can't think of a time where somebody said, you act just like your mama or you act like your daddy, where it was meant as a compliment.
It was a good thing. Yeah.
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 I mean, I'm not saying it can't be used as a compliment. I'm saying most of the time when you hear it, I jokingly say, when Barbara says, "All right, Ronnie," it's not meant that you preached a great sermon. That's not what she's saying. You preach like your daddy. That's not what. It's just usually I'm, doing something, behaving in a way that she don't like.
Yeah, I hear something similar once in a while. Thankfully, I don't hear it very often, but there's one particular phrase that can be said, "You are just like," fill in the blank, and I'm going to be very careful there. And I'm going to tell you, if I wasn't being like that before, when she...
You already
I get
let
there
me show you.
Yeah, let me show you. Yeah.
You think I am now.
That's exactly right. I'm like, not the wisest thing to say.
But we do. I've said recently in a sermon, and it's not new to me, but those behaviors are more caught than taught. They're going to pick up on how you act and how you do, and so it is a mirror, and your kids will mirror how they see you treat other people. Good, bad, and ugly. And sometimes you go, okay, they got it. Sometimes you go, I wish they hadn't got that.
Yeah, because I mean, there have been times when I have said, even to my adult children, I may see something in them, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I know where that came from, or I set a poor example in that particular area, and have said to them, I need to apologize for setting that example sometimes along the way, but I want you to realize, I want you to catch it earlier and deal with it better than I did, so that you don't go down some of the same paths and deal with some of the same struggles.
Yeah, don't just say, well, I learned it from you.
Yes.
Because that always bothers me when somebody says, well, you did it.
Yeah.
Do you see how that turned out? Are you happy about it?
Learn from it. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, the whole 10 Commandments can be summed up in loving God and loving people. Jesus would say the 2 greatest commandments are the same thing: love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and treat your neighbor, or love your neighbor as yourself. What does it mean to love your neighbor as yourself?
What if you don't love yourself? So that means you don't have to do much.
I think that is a real issue.
I think it's a reflection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would agree. I think it's about...
But either way, if you love yourself too much...
or not enough.
Or you don't love yourself enough.
It's a problem that parlays itself outwardly to other people. I agree. It can be a restriction or problem.
Sure, do you think some people love themselves too much?
I think there's an issue.
That's a multifaceted question. I think some people are focused on themselves too much. Yeah. And it makes it hard to see everybody else around you.
Is it because they love themselves too much, or they don't love themselves enough and they're overcompensating?
I think it can be some of both. It seems to me like I also often see it in people who feel like they were somehow not loved well enough by other people, and it's almost like a defense mechanism.
Overcompensation.
Yeah.
I would agree.
I don't disagree with that. What are some ways that you think we mistreat other people? Most common ways we mistreat other people.
Okay, you want me to be honest? This is something I think...
I want you to lie.
Okay. I mean, this is something I think is fairly new. Well, maybe it's just worse now than it ever has been before. I think that we deprive people of our attention constantly. Our attention is so easily taken by so many different things now, that we keep people from, the people who are in our presence, from feeling that they are important enough to have our undivided attention. I was just recently having a conversation with somebody, and she is not one of those people. She is always very intently focused on what you're saying, and she's going to remember it later. And I walked away thinking, man, I really appreciate that about her. That she's not thinking about other things. She's not distracted by other things, that she cares enough about you to give you her full attention when you're having a conversation with her. And unfortunately, that seems to be a kind of hard thing to find anymore.
I would agree. That's a challenge, and it's something that's for the most part lost
Mhm.
in our world today. To back to your question, for me, I think it's more with the things we fail to do or engage or help or reach out, whether it's the attention, whether it's the kindness. It would be rare for me or folks that I know of to just intentionally mistreat people,
Right.
be harsh, rude, ugly, mean. Now, sometimes that does happen. I have seen that some, but that's generally not the issue. I think it's the lack of reaching out to people
Mhm.
to try to help them where they are.
Same thing, lack of attention. You know,
Yeah,
it's in the
that
same. And
that
may I say, as
would
somebody,
be the quote mistreatment.
yes, as somebody who deals with kids really often, boy, can you tell
Mm,
what kids feel that they do not get enough undivided attention, because they're going to figure out a
They're
way to
gonna-
get
yeah.
it. Yeah, it's usually not good when it gets to that point.
You know, you said, Jay, that anybody can. Most people aren't typically rude.
Mm,
It would be an unusual thing, but it does happen to everybody.
mm-hmm.
Recently, this lady contacted me, and she said, "I saw you in Food Line, and you didn't speak to me." And she said, "I know you saw me because you looked right at me."
Mhm.
So yeah, you in the wine section, weren't you?
Trying to pretend like I didn't see you.
Now, I will tell you that I have intentionally
Avoided.
pretended like I didn't see people when they were doing, like I remember passing by the ABC store and I saw somebody coming out of the ABC store, and of course that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah. You should have gone. Beep, beep.
Yeah.
No,
You
but
know
I
what's
saw
my
them,
favorite?
and I know they saw me.
Right.
But I decided I'd look over at the Dollar General and pretend like I wasn't looking their way, and then pass by them. But that wasn't the case this time. I genuinely did not see this person. I didn't see him.
You probably had something else on your mind.
I speak to, so I'd be more likely not to pay attention while you're talking to me. Like you were
Yes, I
talking
know.
about.
100%. Than to avoid you. Yeah.
Then I would not to speak
That's
to
right.
you.
Mhm.
I speak to people I don't know. I mean, I wave at people riding down the road. I nod to people in the I acknowledge they're there in the grocery store. Like, how you doing? Excuse me, whatever. I can't imagine seeing somebody
Yeah.
with my eyes and them looking at me and making eye contact and me not speaking. I can't imagine. But I said, "That's your experience, and I'm sorry that happened. And what I wish had happened is you had spoken to me." And the person did respond back and say, "Well, I just wanted to see what you were going to do, so I didn't speak." I was like, "Okay, like I can't do anything about that." And sometimes stuff happens, but for the most part, my experience is people aren't mistreating people on purpose.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Perceived mistreatment is one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mistreatment is a whole nother thing. But I think there are lots of ways that we can mistreat people that we don't even realize. You talked about not giving people your undivided attention. And I would say, at least in my experience, those people are rare and always have been rare, the people that can. Like I can name like 2 or 3 people who I believe have always given their undivided attention to whoever was in front of them. But for the most part, we're all distracted on some level, and some more than others, but it's becoming more and more of a problem, because even, while we're sitting here, I have to turn all my devices on because right here in this chair, I have 3 different devices that could tell me, hey, somebody's trying to get up with you. So I have to turn them on Do Not Disturb, or they're going to constantly be telling me, hey, somebody's trying to get up with you. And, it used to be sometimes you would look at your watch to see, what time it was. But a lot of times now people are, what's somebody else saying to me? And they're in a conversation, And so that's a challenge. I don't know whether that rises to the level of harsh or not. I don't know. I can tell you where I see harshness, and that's in politics right now. And when I say politics, like, I don't mean what this candidate says about the other candidate. I mean what this person says about people who like that candidate. They have an opinion about you. If they believe you support a particular person, they form all kinds of opinions and say all kinds of horrible things about those people. And it's a terrible environment right now for those kinds of things. Like, you're either this person or you're this person, And I saw. And we can have a conversation about this if we want to, but I kind of saw this play out over the last few weeks. As we're recording this, it would have been a month or plus, but at the time we're recording it, in the last week or two, this little submarine that went down, there were people who made jokes about it. And let me say, all good comedians make fun of just about everything, or they're not. If you start taking stuff off the table, it ain't funny. There were other people who were ridiculing the people, like, these are 5 lives, which is true. How can you make jokes about these 5 people going down? And I saw some, like, horrible words exchanged between people over that situation. And I'm like, y'all don't know the people in there. You're not attached to the people in there. You'd never have $250,000 to spend to go in there. And y'all are here dividing yourselves, being harsh to one another over something that you're not even
qualified to speak to.
That's right. You're not even involved in. And I just saw it play out, how people were harsh. And and part of it has to do with social media. People will say things on social media that they would never say if the person was sitting in front of them.
Absolutely.
Ever. They would never say it. But they'll say things about people that they would never say.
I was at camp, so I heard about it. That was about it.
What, the submarine thing?
Yeah. It's sad, no matter.
It is. People die. It's always sad.
Oh, yeah, because it's somebody's family.
And but when we're harsh about it,
right,
we have to be careful.
Yeah, should be.
Calloused.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Well, thank you for joining us today on this edition of One Single Story. We hope you'll be back tomorrow as we finish up our conversation about the book of Obadiah.